Star Wars Hunters is a free-to-play mobile game developed by... Well, it's not. We're not talking about Star Wars Hunters, but Outlaws. It's like the same name. What do you... Star Wars Outlaws is a brand new open-world Star Wars game developed by Ubisoft and Massive Entertainment. Set between the events of The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, you'll explore distinct locations across the galaxy, both iconic and new. Risk It All is Kay Vess, a scoundrel seeking freedom and the means to start a new life, along with her companion Nyx. Fight, steal, and outwit your way through the galaxy's crime syndicates as you join the galaxy's most wanted.
At least, that's what the website says.
Yeah, to me, Star Wars Outlaws just kind of looks to be another run-of-the-mill Ubisoft game with a Star Wars skin slapped on. I mean, like, don't get me wrong, if Ubisoft games are your thing, like, you probably like it.
But I've never really been a huge fan. I mean, they're just kind of like generic, samey, find the stuff on the map and go pick it up or whatever. Except Mario Rabbids. That game slapped way harder than it had any right to, quite honestly.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I really hope it surpasses my expectations and we actually get a good Star Wars product for once, because, well, let's just say recent endeavors have been
Bruh, look at this dude. Wait till you see the... No.
Jedi Survivor, though, that was peak. They absolutely cooked with that one. And from EA too, no less. That's crazy, man. That's crazy. Look, with Outlaws, I'm hoping for the best, but, like, early looks at the gameplay have been slightly concerning, to say the least.
Huh? What was that noise?
You think you can take me?
That, and apparently Ubisoft has been whining and dining certain influencers with trips to Disneyland and early access to gameplay sections of the game. As you could probably tell from the title of this video, I'm definitely not one of these people. What, Ubisoft was gonna fly me out to convince my 6 subscribers to get the game? But with that being said, Ubisoft, if anyone from Ubisoft happens to somehow stumble across this video, just know I absolutely would sell my soul for your free publicity and trips to Disneyland. So call me. No, I have not played Star Wars Outlaws, but Ubisoft has actually had encounters with the Star Wars license in the past. Today, I'll be playing another Ubisoft Star Wars game. One far older and more nostalgic. No, not that one. Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. No, not that one either. There we go. I love this game. Most people hear Revenge of the Sith video game and they think of the PS2 and original Xbox versions, and don't get me wrong, I love that game too, but for me that was more of a game that you get to play when you sleep over at a friend's house that had a PS2 sort of game. I did not have a PS2. The first home console I ever owned was the Wii. Ah, the Wii. Good times. And also home to another couple Star Wars gems, but maybe we'll get to those another time. No, the Game Boy Advance was the first console I ever owned. So when 5-year-old me walked into a GameStop with my cousin one day and we saw a video game of the most recent Star Wars movie at the time, we knew we had to get it. He and I played the absolute hell out of that game, but we usually only made it up to like level 5 before we got stonewalled by skill issue.
The only reason we ever saw the rest of the game was because there was some weird glitch that unlocked the rest of the levels or something. I don't actually remember the circumstances, but we definitely never beat anything past level 5.
But what is this game exactly? Well, it's sort of like an old school beat 'em up, but with a Revenge of the Sith skin, and I'm all for it. You go through 13 levels as either Anakin or Obi-Wan, cutting down anything that gets in your way. Each character has the same base moveset, but each with their own unique animations, really differentiating them from each other. Obi-Wan swings and strikes gracefully and with purpose, meanwhile Anakin's over here just letting everything out. It's a really nice attention to detail, and I appreciate them really making them feel distinct, even if it is mostly visual in this case. The pixel art and animations as a whole are just really well done and visually appealing. I almost never say this, but good job, Ubisoft. Their saber swings change depending on the direction you hold the D-pad, adding more depth to the combat than simply mashing the attack button. I mean, you definitely still mash the attack button, but it's a bit more calculated. Simply pressing the button multiple times without pressing any direction has you performing a basic yet flashy lightsaber combo directly in front of you. Holding up has you perform an uppercut slash, and holding down has you swing downward. Well, in Anakin's case at least. Obi-Wan sweeps the leg, knocking down opponents, and can follow up with a downward stab. I'd say Obi-Wan's is more useful here, simply for the fact that it's got a faster startup and recovery. Anakin is really just taking his time, letting out all of his frustration. Finally, holding backwards has your character perform a backwards stab. This move looks awesome, but honestly, it would have been much more useful if your character just turned around. The range of this move is somewhat lacking, and there were several instances where I was just like mere pixels away from taking out an opponent, and would have done so if I had just been facing towards them instead. Next, we have jumping and jump attacks. Jumping forward gives you a front flip, and jumping backwards gives you a back flip. This might seem insignificant, but it's not, for a couple of reasons. The first reason ties back into what I was talking about with the backstabs. Backflipping towards an enemy will still have you facing away from them, occasionally leading to some frustration. But the other reason is that the backflip actually has a hitbox, so if you're facing an enemy directly and you backflip away from them, you'll actually kick them in the face and knock them down. To be honest, I've never actually done this intentionally, and whenever it happened it was on accident. But it's always just like a straight shot of dopamine into your brain whenever you knock someone down with a backflip. It just looks cool, man. Additionally, you can perform two separate attacks from a jump. Simply pressing attack will have you do a jump slash, while holding down an attack will have you do a jump stab. Functionally, these moves seem to be identical, but I figured I'd mention them anyway. And to round out the basic movement, there's the sprint function. Double tapping the D-pad forward or back will have you run towards that direction, and surprisingly enough, there's a unique dash attack as well. Obi-Wan does a nice forward thrust with his lightsaber, and Anakin just straight up Sparta kicks his enemies, knocking them down. Once again, I'd say Obi-Wan's is more useful since his can just chain straight into a basic saber combo, so you don't have to chase the enemy down. That, and attacking with the lightsaber means it'll actually affect the background objects. Okay, so background objects. In this game, aside from attacking enemies and moving right, there are certain background objects that can be destroyed to drop various items. These items include back-to-tanks, force shadows, experience points, and sometimes even an extra life. Yes, this game has a live system, but it's really not that bad. Losing all your lives has you restart the level, but levels in this game are pretty short, so it's not a huge deal. That, and bosses thankfully give you checkpoints that override the live system, which I was very thankful for on one level in particular. Quick side tangent here, I'm not sure why the back-to-tanks look like orange Fanta in this game, or why force shadows look like straight up bubbles. In fact, I don't even know what a force shadow is supposed to be, but that's what the game calls them, so whatever I guess. Bubbles, guys, they're bubbles. Anyways, enemies can also drop these items, so just keep a lookout, especially for those experience points. You're gonna need them if you want to upgrade your force powers. Force powers, you say? Yeah, this is a Star Wars game where you play as Jedi, so naturally you'll be able to use the Force as well. At the end screen of each level, you'll have a chance to spend your experience points on Force abilities and upgrades, as well as granting a permanent stat boost to one of 3 stats. More health, more damage, or more stamina. Personally, I always prioritize damage because enemies can't take away your health if they're already dead. But back to force powers, this is where Anakin and Obi-Wan really start to differentiate themselves. They each get 6 different force powers that can be upgraded with those experience points from earlier, with 4 being unique to each and 2 being shared between them. These abilities use this blue stamina bar below the health bar. It slowly regenerates over time, or you can fill a chunk quickly by picking up a bubble. Both characters have access to force push and pull, which do exactly what you think they do. Obi-Wan gets access to force speed, force shield, mind trick, and force heal. Force speed and force shield are passive buffs that make Obi-Wan faster and immune to projectiles respectively. Mind trick stuns enemies, and force heal, well, it heals you. Look, I'm just gonna come right out and say it. Force heal is just straight up busted. It completely trivializes the game. Once I had it unlocked, I don't think I died a single time. It practically invalidates all of Obi-Wan's other force powers because you'll be spending your stamina bar on the force healing 99% of the time. This, along with the other minor advantages he has over Anakin, really makes Obi-Wan feel like the easy version of this game. Meanwhile, Anakin gets access to Saber Throw, Force Choke, Rage, and Absorb. Saber Throw and Force Choke, again, they work as advertised. What you see is what you get. Rage is a passive buff that gives you a damage increase for a few hits, and finally there's Absorb. This was my preferred force power of Anakin's. It seemingly acts the same as Force Choke, but unlike Force Choke, which can affect multiple enemies at a time once upgraded, Absorb can only ever target one enemy at a time. The trade-off for this, of course, is that you absorb the enemy's energy. Now I was hoping this would mean it fills your health bar, but unfortunately it instead fills your super meter. Yes, this game has a super meter. Anakin's can be filled by using Absorb and simply hitting enemies with your lightsaber. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan's can be filled by using his force abilities and deflecting attacks. I'm now realizing we've gotten this far and I haven't mentioned deflecting attacks. Basically, there's a block button. Simply holding it will block attacks, but pressing it at just the right time will deflect red blaster bolts back at the enemies. Anyway, these super meters give you access to 4 unique attacks per character, one at 25% full, one at 50%, one at 75%, and finally one at 100%. These 3 attacks below 100% are powerful for sure, but I pretty much never use them because the 100% attack is just a screen nuke that one-shots all enemies on screen. The odd part is, you start the game with the 100% super move, but you unlock the rest as you go. Kinda seems backwards if you ask me, but at least you get the most useful one from the get-go. The rest of the super moves are unlocked after beating each major boss. Now, the boss fights in this game change up the gameplay a bit. They stay on one screen the whole time and lock you facing one direction. You can still move forward and backwards, but you'll always be facing the boss, which is nice. In addition, in boss arenas, your block changes significantly. Instead of holding block to block everything, bosses will switch between low and high attacks, which need to be blocked accordingly. Hold up and block to block high, and hold down and block to block low. Simple enough. Some bosses also employ force attacks. These can't be blocked with your lightsaber, and instead must be absorbed by holding the force button. Except Count Dooku's lightning. Hope you saw the movies so that you know lightsabers can block electricity, because the game sure as hell doesn't tell you. This is made worse by the fact that Count Dooku is the damn tutorial boss. Text boxes will literally pop up and tell you what to do for your first playthrough, but not for the lightning attack. Nope. This is kind of a trend for some bosses, where they'll have deceptive animations that make you think they're doing one thing, but then they do another. Like, take this attack from Count Dooku for example. Bro's crouching, so you block low, right? Great. Now here we are fighting Anakin at the end of the game. Oh look, he's crouching. Block low? Block low. Works like a charm. Now we're back at the end fighting Obi-Wan this time. Hey look, he's crouching. All my training has led me to this moment. Okay, I don't care if it's been damn near 20 years and this is an emulator. I'm returning the game right now. Yeah, a lot of the time these boss fights can be basically trial and error. Once you get hit with some BS, just remember it for the next time and don't get hit by it again. Overall, they're super simple, but they're kinda fun. Now on to the main levels proper. Obi-Wan and Anakin go through 13 levels each. The first 4 are shared between them before they split off for the next 8 before meeting back up for their final duel in level 13. To start, they'll both infiltrate Grievous's ship, fight Dooku, and escape with the Chancellor. From there, Anakin will travel the streets of Coruscant, the Chancellor's office building, the Jedi Temple, and the bridges of Mustafar before meeting Obi-Wan for the final duel. Yeah, I don't really remember there being a bunch of battle droids in the Chancellor's office, but hey, you gotta pad out the level somehow. Obi-Wan travels to the upper levels of Utapau, the Utapau Plains and Caves, the Jedi Temple, and finally he'll meet Anakin on Mustafar. If you don't remember the Utapau Plains and Caves either, don't worry, you're not going crazy. One thing I really love about these games is that since they were developed alongside and even released before the actual movie, you get to see some of the concepts that were left on the cutting room floor. I'm not sure what Obi-Wan would have been doing in these caves, maybe killing these slug monsters, but it's cool to see regardless. There's not really much to be said about level design because you can basically boil each level down to walk right, kill enemies, walk right some more. But there are some unique set pieces, like these sections where you're chased by these hailfire droids. They're kind of annoying because there are often obstacles you need to jump over while being chased, and since the hailfire droid takes up half the damn screen, there isn't much screen real estate to see what's in your path. What's worse, your jump has ending lag, so you better hope you have enough leeway between you and this droid, otherwise you're gonna get got. The absolute worst is when they have these falling explosive barrels. They usually fall in patterns, but they're so fast you won't be able to tell until you've already been hit, and the hitboxes are a bit ambiguous. There are also these floor lasers that sometimes move, but since they're always on screen, they usually aren't much of an issue. Now, let's talk enemies. This game actually has a pretty decent amount of enemy variety. There's plenty of palette swaps to be found for sure, but there's also a variety of unique enemies, so it really works. And since the characters take different paths, they'll be fighting different enemies for the most part, keeping the game visually interesting for back-to-back playthroughs. Obi-Wan and Anakin both start out fighting a variety of different battle droids, including basic B1s, supers, droidicas, and these linebacker dudes. But soon enough, Obi-Wan will have to fight some Magna Guards as well as the clones and these sentry drone things that follow them. Meanwhile, Anakin continues fighting droids for a bit, but eventually he attacks the Jedi Temple and has to fight a bunch of Jedi and these training droids before finally heading to Mustafar and fighting a bunch of Neimoidians and more droids. Okay, real quick, I despise these training droids. They shoot at you and blow you up on contact, which is annoying already, but what's worse is how the game decides to spawn them. They often come in patterns and quantities that make it really unfun to try and deal with. Just no. This game features 3 difficulty options, with Padawan and Jedi being available from the jump, and Master needing to be unlocked by beating Jedi. As far as I can tell, the only difference between these difficulty levels is the amount of lives you get at the start of a level. Padawan grants you 4, Jedi grants you 2, and on Master you just gotta raw dog these levels, no second chances. Like I said earlier, with Obi-Wan this is basically a non-issue since with Force Heal you shouldn't really be dying anyways, but with Anakin it can get a bit frustrating at times. But overall the game's not too hard, so if you play carefully or just don't get unlucky, you should be able to make it through. But also thank God they have boss checkpoints because for whatever reason I was getting absolutely destroyed by this AAT boss on Mustafar. Both playthroughs of my game on Jedi difficulty took about an hour and a half, but this Anakin playthrough on Master took like 2 hours, and I'm like 90% sure that most of that extra time was spent on this boss. But yeah, this game isn't super long, so if you wanted to check it out to relive the glory days of 2005, or simply out of morbid curiosity, just know that it won't be a huge time commitment or anything. I should also note that this game does have a multiplayer component, but seeing as how I never knew anyone else who had this game, or a link cable for that matter, I've never had the chance to experience it for myself, unfortunately. Apparently, this game has a co-op mode where you can play through levels based on the 2003 Clone Wars series. That sounds awesome. Speaking of the 2003 Clone Wars series, the Mace Windu boss fight has a move just like in that series, where he does these lightning fast punches at you. He can even do this move while you're blocking? With a lightsaber? Sir, you are punching a lightsaber. Like, were bro's hands lightsaber proof this whole time? And if so, How did Anakin cut his hand off in the movie? Did Windu forget that his hands were immune to lightsabers? Is he stupid? I should also mention that there was a DS version of this game as well, with the main difference being the addition of a few Starfighter levels, as well as the music being the full instrumental renditions of these iconic Star Wars tracks. Aside from that, they're basically the exact same game. I tend to prefer the GBA version since I'm not a huge fan of the Starfighter levels, and when it comes to the music, I'd rather hear a 16-bit rendition of these iconic songs than the regular versions through a DS speaker. I don't know, something about hearing these songs and these bit-crushed renditions is just really charming and gives this game a unique aspect you won't find elsewhere. But anyway, that's the handheld Revenge of the Sith game for you. I realize a lot of my fondness for this game definitely comes from nostalgia, as it's pretty simple and bare bones, but I also think what's there is genuinely solid. I only intended to play through this game one time each as Obi-Wan and Anakin, but my first playthrough's recording got messed up and I had to do a third. I was annoyed at first, but I found myself booting the game back up and really enjoying going through it again, despite having just done so 2 times before. Even while making this video, I've been thinking about booting the game back up for another run. It's just good, quick, simple fun. And no, that's not a review about me from my ex-girlfriend.
But it certainly could be.
If you're even slightly interested in checking this game out, I'd highly encourage it. Getting it on original hardware isn't super expensive or anything, but there are other ways. Like ways that will take literally 5 minutes to get up and running. Just saying. Anyways, I've gone on about this game long enough. If you've stuck around through the end, I just want to say thank you. It really does mean a lot to me, and I really do appreciate it. If I've convinced even one person to try out this game, I'll consider this a job well done. And with that, I'm out. Thank you so much for watching my video. Bye bye.
Ubisoft, call me.